All right, thank you, Luis. So I'll be starting, and then Michelle will join about halfway through. So Michelle and I are covering emerging weed issues. We're going to start with a little bit of a watergrass update. So as everyone knows, we've been dealing with this new watergrass species or biotype since about 2017. Just a brief history here. We had 2 fields identified in 2017. And then Luis and I collected about 10 populations in 2018 for a preliminary herbicide screening. Just a quick overview of what makes this one a little bit different phenotypically, so what it looks like. So the seed on this is about the same size as watergrass, or sorry, as barnyard grass, so a little smaller than watergrass seed. It is completely awned with very long awns. And the, I say most characteristic part of this is that it really doesn't seem to respond very well to any of our current herbicides in the field. A couple more pictures of it. We did some identification work in 2017 with UC Davis at the herbarium, and unfortunately came back with inconclusive results. We also sent it to 2 Echinocloa experts and also came back with inconclusive results. We have some genetic work needed, we think. We're currently soliciting outside funding, but we did get funding from the Rice Research Board to do a phenotypic analysis, kind of like we did with the weedy rice, and we are currently working on that. So the preliminary screening, as I said, we did with 10 populations in 2018. We had 4 from Butte County, 2 from Glenn, 3 from Sutter, and 1 from Yolo. We also added 2 known susceptible populations for a comparison. They were screened using standard labeled field rates, and I'll show you guys the rates in a moment. The screening was conducted last year in the greenhouse. And the application timing is not maybe exactly how we would apply in the field, but this is really for resistance screening. So we applied at the 2-leaf stage of grass, which corresponds to about a day of seeding to 1.5 leaf stage of application for rice. So kind of depending on weather. We did a percent control, biomass, and plant number at 14 days after application, and we did 4 replications. So, a replicated experiment in the greenhouse. To give you an idea of the rates that we used, these are the field rates of product applied per acre, and then this is the rate in terms of grams of AI per hectare. So most of these we did at sort of a standard field rate. We didn't necessarily go up to the highest field rate available on propanil or regiment, but the rest of these were pretty much the highest labeled field rate. And you can see we screened with all of our currently available granular herbicides, and then all of our foliar herbicides that are available for watergrass control. To give an idea of what the susceptible populations look like, this is control by biomass. So here are our granules on the left. You can see sort of a range of control for granite, serrano, bolero, and butte, from about 50% for butte. Butte isn't considered a strong watergrass herbicide, up to about 90% for bolero. Similar for our foliar applications. And again, a little bit different profile for the second susceptible population, but relatively good control for greenhouse conditions. I'm not going to go over each one of our resistant or suspected resistant biotypes here, but I'll just give a screenshot of a few of these here. So these are the 3 samples from Sutter. And you can see that granite, serrano, bolero, and butte really didn't control this at all, bolero and butte in particular. Second sample, similar situation, very low control with all of our granular herbicides. And again, same thing with this third sample. You can see there's a little bit of variation amongst the biotypes in terms of levels of control, but really all of this would be considered less than 50% control and not susceptible to these herbicides. The later foliar applications still seem to be working. We had 100% control with propanil on all of our samples. regiment, we had a little bit of variation. And again, I didn't go up to the highest labeled field rate on regiment. So if you're using a higher field rate, it should work. Clinchers, similar, we're seeing, over 90%, 80, 90% control. Again, this is not all of the biotypes, but to summarize here, so 10 of the 10 samples were not controlled by granite or butte, and that pretty much corresponds with what we're seeing in the field. 9 of the 10 samples weren't controlled by Bolero. 6 of the 10 were not controlled by Serrano. So overall, we're not really seeing good control on any of these biotypes that we collected out of the 10 with the early granular applications. Later season applications of foliar herbicides were working on all 10 of the samples that we collected with at least 60% control. We had a couple samples that we had some failures that were likely due to application timing or timing issues in the field. So we are continuing to work on this. Luis and I collected an additional 64 samples in 2020. And as I said before, we've started that work in the greenhouse, and we're going to continue to look for both control methods as well as identification information. And there's also some field testing going on too. So preliminary recommendations that we're emphasizing early season control. So you really need to get out there as fast as you can with as much as you can. So some early season treatments suggestions could be using a stale seedbed, using a non-selective herbicide with that stale seedbed. Keep in mind that I haven't field tested all of these, so I don't know how they affect phytotoxicity in rice. But something like a pre-plant abolish followed by Serrano or butte or granite. So basically hitting it as fast as you can, as quickly as you can. Serrano followed by butte or Bolero or granite GR. Butte followed by granite GR or Bolero. So we're really, the aim is to use as many modes of action as quickly as possible at the beginning of the season to sort of overwhelm this grass. Even with that, however, there's still a strong likelihood that a follow-up application might still be required later in the season. So, and that it really corresponds with what we're seeing in the fields. Right, Michelle.
Okay, thanks, Whitney. So I have been doing some Loyant trials, herbicide trials down in the Delta the last couple of years in 2019 and 2020. And Kasim provided a great overview, a lot of information about Loyant already. So I'll just jump right into what we've been doing. Next. There's a little bit of background. As Kasim said, the company thinks that the product will be available for the 2021 season. It has good efficacy on broadleaf weeds and some efficacy, pretty good efficacy, what we're finding in the Delta at least, on some of the Clinicloa species of grasses. It doesn't have any activity on Sprangletop, however. So our main question was, could Loyant be used in the drill seeded systems that we have down in the Delta? And I'm going to go over the results very quickly, given the amount of time, but I've written up a report which is available on my website that describes both the 2019 and 2020 trials. In this presentation, I'll just highlight some of the 2020 results. Next. So the weed counts that we found in our trial, we looked at weed counts on 7-day intervals after treatment, days after treatment. The herbicide programs are listed there on the left-hand side. So in 2020, we looked at different combinations with Loyant. In 2019, we looked at different rates. And so in this trial, we used all the same rate of about 1.37, so 1 1/3 pints, as Kasim mentioned, but in different treatment combinations with these other herbicides. The grower standard treatment, which I have there listed about 5 treatments down, that is a combination of Regiment, Sandia, Prowl, and Super Wham. And so you can see that there weren't many differences among the treatments early on in the season, but as the season progressed, we started to see those treatments separate with more weed counts in that Prowl treatment, which we considered our control treatment, as just the pre-emergence herbicide. And the grower standard is continuing to perform well to keep these grasses under control, but also that Loyant Super WAM treatment performs similarly to the grower's standard practice. That picture up in the right-hand corner is to remind me to mention that the primary weeds that we were dealing with at this site were watergrass and barnyard grass. So we did see Sprangletop in the trial in 2019. However, we didn't have trouble with Sprangletop in 2020. So we don't have the same kind of mix of weeds at this site. And so we really were able to focus in on those grasses. Next. We looked at crop injury at the same 7-day interval that we did weed counts. The one injury symptom that we were observing with the Loyant treatments is this leaf curling, which I've highlighted with the yellow arrows. This was a symptom that we observed in 2019. However, we only observed it for probably about a couple of weeks after treatment. In 2020, we observed it for several weeks more, till about 42 days after treatment. The company Corteva has observed this symptom in other trials that they've conducted, and they've found that it generally is observed when there are other environmental stressors. We noticed the symptom particularly on the edge of the plots that was closest to the field edge. And we didn't observe that this symptom had any impact on rice maturity or yield. Next. So to summarize our trial, we saw no differences in yield. I'm not showing the yield numbers. They're available in the trial report. We hand harvested the trial and there was a heavy dew. And so the yield numbers are a bit inflated. However, the variability among the different plots was low. And so we think that the relative performance of the herbicide programs is robust, and we saw no differences, showing that Loyant provides good activity on these weeds and a similar control of weeds at this site as the grower standard practice. But keep in mind, you may see this leaf rolling symptom, and that will be indicated on the label. Next. So weedy rice. So with Whitney's leadership, we've been dabbling into weedy rice, getting to know it a little bit better here in the Delta region, and brainstorm ways of doing outreach about it, and also looking at how we can control it. Next. So again, as background, just to reiterate things that are probably well known by now, but weedy rice is considered weedy because of its undesirable characteristics like shattering and quality. It's sometimes called red rice because it may have a red pericarp. And our research and extension objectives have included assessing the distribution of it, disseminating information about what we know, our best management practices, and conducting research trials, again, with Whitney's leadership on those, which includes ongoing testing of herbicides. The distribution of weedy rice, back in 2016, I believe it was Luis and Whitney and Timothy Blank from the California Crop Improvement Association estimated about 10,000 acres, mostly in the Sacramento Valley, but a little bit in the Delta region. More recent assessments of the distribution maybe indicate that it's in a little bit wider, broader geography, maybe up another 4,000 or 5,000 acres, including more in the Delta. Next.
We have a couple minutes left, Michelle.
All right, thanks, Luis. So just some of our best management practices. It's a requirement to use certified seeds, so keep that in mind. You want to try to rogue plants as soon as you see them. And if they've already headed out, bag those panicles so that they don't shatter into your field. Sanitation, crop rotation, if possible, make sure that you're harvesting those fields last if possible. And reducing or eliminating tillage at the end of the season as best as possible. Winter flooding can help to deteriorate weedy rice seed that's just sitting on the surface. Next slide. Whitney wrote up a great blog article on the UC Rice blog that talks about some work she's done looking at Suppress, which is registered for organic systems, but it's showing good burning of the weedy rice as a spot treatment. Keep in mind that there are some things on the label that don't allow you to spot spray when the water is still on the field. You would need to drain the field. And note the timing and the reflooding recommendations as indicated on the screen and as indicated on the label. Again, you can see Whitney's blog article for more detailed information about the use of Suppress in weedy rice. And other herbicide trials are probably in the works. And so, you know, we're keeping that on the forefront of weedy rice, our weedy rice research program with Cooperative Extension. And with that, I think that's me, and we could launch the poll, Julia.
All right, great. There you go.
So the first question relates to Whitney's part of the presentation. The new watergrass can be controlled with one herbicide application. Is that true or false? And then the second question relates to my part of the presentation. What crop injury symptom might be seen with Loyant herbicide, particularly when the crop is experiencing other environmental stressors? Is it A, leaf rolling, B, stunting, C, delayed maturity of the rice, or D, rice stand loss? Okay, so there's your poll results. And for question number 1, the correct answer is false. The new watergrass can be controlled with one herbicide application. That's false. And for question number 2, the leaf symptom that you might see with Loyant would be leaf rolling is your correct answer.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, thanks